Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Heavy Branches. I'm Jacob, and I'm here with my two favorite co-hosts, Tanner, Dalton, and Jacob Cabe. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather this week, as you probably can tell in my voice. But anyways, I'm still super excited to be back here on Heavy Branches with you guys this week. Before we get into our episode, Tanner, how you been doing?
I've been doing pretty good. Willow had a couple weeks where she was not feeling the greatest, but she's starting to smile now, which is cool. She's gotten to that point, and Kenzie's always sending me videos of her smiling and grinning, and so that's cool. And then uh, church has been going well. I've been enjoying a couple weeks of uh, specific expository preaching because I was preaching more topical for a couple weeks, and it's always it always feels good to get back to the basics and just preach through a text. So pretty good. How you been?
Good, Cabe.
I'm doing good. I have been really enjoying myself. We're starting to move and everything. My wife graduates from Asbury University this Saturday, so we're real excited to celebrate with her. And then again, we have a revival coming up, so we've been planning that. So everything's been going well. Just really excited about the next couple weeks and a lot of the changes happening. I've been preaching through. Oh, I just finished the book of Philippians Sunday, and that series was a lot of fun. I love preaching about joy and why, as Christians, we can have joy in this life. So that was a lot of fun.
So what's the next Bible book?
Exodus. We'll be in Exodus this month. So I go New Testament, Old Testament, and we kind of jump back and forth. So I've never preached a series in Exodus before, and so this is going to be a fun challenge. I've been really enjoying my Old Testament preaching. It's something that, like, when you're fill-in preaching, normally I lean towards the New Testament, like one-off sermons. So I hadn't done it a ton until I got into like full-time vocational ministry. But like some of my favorite series have been talking about the Old Testament and how that connects to us today and even to Christ. And so I'm really pumped about doing this. What about you, Tanner? How are you, brother? Or Jacob? Oh, Jacob, how are you doing?
I'm glad you're mentally here with us today, Gabe.
I'm not. I'm never mentally. She always.
He's not the only one we're going to talk about that forgot you, Jacob.
Oh yeah, some foreshadowing. I'm used to it by now. So now I've been preaching a little bit out of the Old Testament as well. I was preaching through the Book of James, and we're 3 chapters into that, and the series got broken up by Easter because I went back and preached at my home church for Easter. So we're just going to take a small little break from James, and I preached through the book of Haggai. So I did Haggai chapter 1 last Sunday. I had an old lady come up to me after the service was over and say she couldn't remember if she's ever heard a sermon from the book of Haggai, which I thought was interesting to your point, Cabe, about how a lot of times we lean to preach New Testament, but it is important to go back and see the Old Testament too. And see how it both connects to us and to Jesus. You said that really well there. Completely agree. So been enjoying that. Going to keep going through Haggai. It's only 2 chapters, so we won't be there too long. Short little book, but a lot of practical lessons for us. So I've been enjoying that. I've been not enjoying being sick. And by sick, I just mean my allergies suck. I'm not contagious. So if you see me at the revival later tonight at Central, don't worry. You're not going to get sick from me. But other than that, I've been doing good, enjoying our new dog, Luca, little Australian Shepherd Poodle mix. He's fun. So
I love the name. Is his name after one of the greatest current basketball players in the NBA?
So when my sister was like picking the list of, we had like 4 or 5 names we were thinking about, and when Luca was on there, Sage, I love her. But if I could change something about her, she doesn't care at all about basketball, and it hurts my soul a little bit. She doesn't care about Kentucky, which, if you know me, I mean, I watch every Kentucky game and love Kentucky basketball. I've tried to get her to watch it with us, and she won't. If you're on the video, you see this UK Wildcat in the background. You can see this UK Wildcat on my shirt. But anyways, Sage has no idea that Luca is a basketball player's name. If you asked her about basketball players, she could probably tell you LeBron. She could probably tell you Kobe, and that's probably about it. So yeah, she had no idea Luka was a basketball player's name, but Stone and I for sure think about Luka Doncic whenever we think about our puppy. So,
Well, glad everybody's doing good, and we hope that Jake gets a little better. And congratulations to Meg with her graduating Saturday. That's exciting, and getting to move, more full time to up on the mountain,
Yeah.
to Mount Carmel, and so that's all exciting. Well, we did something last week. We did a Would You Rather, and I asked the question about, but to these two, would you rather have a Jason Cole module or a Brian Schultz module? And
you've started this whole ruckus.
for those of you that don't know, Brian Schultz and Jason Cole are two of our LBC Louisville Bible College professors, and they also do a podcast called Theology Nerds. And so I don't know after what they've done, after how they've responded, if we should be promoting that. No, I'm just kidding. It's a great podcast. You all should check it out for sure if you haven't already. But they did not take kindly to this would you rather question. They had hurt feelings.
They didn't take kindly to you, Tanner. You said
No. See,
you caused ruckus.
I did cause this ruckus, but they were not happy, especially Brian, about how you so quickly chose Jason Cole and how Jacob so pittily gave Brian a vote.
Well, listen, I thought we were gonna just not pit them against each other. Like I thought me and Cable were gonna be like, no, we can't answer that. They're both great because they are. And then Cable was just like, oh, I don't even need to think about it. And so that, I mean,
I've been told to be honest, Jacob. So that's what I did.
oh, so you can't honestly say that you love both of them as professors, and that it would be hard to choose who you like more. You can't honestly say that.
I love both of them, but the question wasn't, do you love these professors and who do you love more? It was, whose class would you rather take? And so that's what I answered.
And so to add to this, I have only had one class with both of them. Okay. And so I'm going to share my response to this. And my response is Brian Schultz. I love Brian, and his class was great. And in fairness to Jason, his class was Hebrew and Brian's was Origins, or the first 3 chapters of Genesis. So the class variation in itself was not quite up to, like, they don't equal each other.
It's not so much that you like Brian more as a professor than Jason. It's just that Brian's class topic was more interesting to you.
Yeah, and because of the class topic, Brian outdoes Jason at the moment. But Brian is my answer, and so I'll let them do with that what they will. Neither of them are my favorite professor at the college, so that's,
well,
What
about your favorite non-blood related professor? How about that?
Okay, non-blooded, then probably Brian.
Okay, there you go.
So
I hope Carrie's not listening.
Carrie, I love Carrie.
Oh, goodness.
Anyway, beyond all that, they decided to take this a step further, which is exactly what I wanted. I don't know if the Jacobs wanted it, but I really wanted them to hear it and to have a response. So they went on their podcast and responded and chose which of us was their favorite student. Brian chose me, and Jason Cole chose Jacob Cabe. So Jacob Simpson was left out and forgotten, just like Cabe did at the beginning of our episode here. And I'm sure Jacob's not feeling the best after that. But on top of that, they have challenged us. They have challenged us to Bible trivia at their Theology Nerds Live in November. So how are we feeling about this?
Well, first, I think we're absolutely accepting the challenge. We're all going to do it. We're going to be there. And so I'm gathering the date. And this is something that isn't just going to be, this is a live event that you can actually go to and watch. And there'll be a bunch of different things happening. But we'll have a trivia, Bible trivia event from us three versus them two on November 14th and 15th in Kent Christian Church in Madison, Indiana. But I can speak for the three of us that we are accepting this challenge and we will be there. What's your guys' thoughts? Do you think we can take them?
We're absolutely accepting. Do I think we can take them? Um, in all honesty, we shouldn't be able to. But I know Jacob's unhappy. He wasn't picked. He's competitive, and he's gonna come with a vengeance.
I don't
He's ready to go.
I don't accept any challenge or any competition with intention of losing.
There we go.
I share that sentiment. I can be pretty competitive, maybe outmatched, but the reason March Madness is such a great sporting event of the year is because the underdog wins all the time. So
There we go.
it's a great place to be when nobody expects you to win and then you pull it off. So if we lose, 3 Bible college students lose to 2 Bible college professors, yeah, we get it. We've seen that story a million times, but maybe we'll have something else up our sleeve that day.
I am going to say that they definitely have the advantage, not only that they're professors, but I was thinking about this of years of experience just in life and ministry. If you add up the amount of years they've lived on this earth, they've lived more on this earth than all three of us. They're about 75. I don't know how old they are. I'm guessing they're running about 90 combined. And so they definitely should beat us pretty easily.
Wow.
They say that 3 against 2, that's not fair. They're definitely got the advantage above us. So
With that, we're taking up the gauntlet that Brian threw down, that Jason threw down, and we have the formal request of rules. We need rules, and we need a fair judge, somebody to run the trivia.
the questions. Someone find the questions isn't us or them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our call back to Jason and Brian on this challenge, and I'm excited
to find the trivia, and then we will definitely be ready to go. And so this is an invite to our listeners. Try to be at this event, not because we'll be there, but because we think it's going to be a great time, a fellowship between Christians and time to learn and a time of fun to competition is always a good time.
And other than the fun competition, there's going to be, from what I understand, at least one live recording of the Theology Nerds podcast, which all 3 of us listen to regularly, would highly recommend. And so you'll be blessed by not only the fellowship and the fun of the little competition, but also from at least one live episode that they're going to do there. It'll be worth your time. I can promise you that.
Absolutely. And when they get a formulated schedule for that, we'll be able to share that and things like that as well. So,
and again, that's November 14th and 15th in Madison, Indiana, at the Kent Christian Church. So we definitely recommend being at that event.
Yeah. All right. So I'm feeling pretty amped now. I don't know about you guys. Let's hop in here to our study for this morning or this evening or afternoon or whenever you listen to this. But we're looking at John chapter 2, continuing through the Gospel of John. And I haven't said this in a while, but we always want to encourage you guys to read the chapter before you listen or as you listen, because we're not reading every verse. We read several, but we want you to have the full context of the chapter and to be able to grasp, thoroughly what we're talking about. And the Bible is the foundation of all of this. So be sure to read the chapter and go along with us. But like I said, we're hopping into John chapter 2. And this is John chapter 2 begins with the wedding at Cana, which is a pretty well known account of Jesus. We see here his first miracle. And Cabe, I'll let you kick off some thoughts on this wedding at Cana.
Okay. Well, like you said, this is Jesus's first miracle, and it says in verse 2 that Jesus and his disciples were invited to a wedding, a celebration. Unlike weddings today, this would have been a multi-day celebration. I don't know about you, Tanner. To me, that's kind of a shocking thing to think about. I wanted my wedding to be, this is my opinion, not my wife's opinion, by the way. I wanted my wedding to be as short as physically possible. I remember just thinking, like, I love people, but I do not want this to last all day. But here they lasted multiple days. They like to celebrate. But during this time, the mother of Jesus says that there is no more wine. And so the miracle here was that there was no more wine, and that Jesus was going to provide wine for this wedding. And he does that by taking 6 stone water pots and then going ahead that were used for purification. So I think it's something we need to think about. These water pots weren't like clean drinking water, and they also weren't like glasses or vase basins that you would pour. That's not what they were. They were large basins of water that you could stick your hands in and wash your hands, your face, or whatever. And so at the bottom of these water pots would have been multiple inches of slime. Of grossness because of the amount of people coming through, and so this wasn't a miracle of just Jesus turning clean water into wine. He was taking gross, disgusting, large basins of water and turning them into something that is drinkable, because the basins were not drinkable water in the way that they were. And so this miracle is also something that Jesus says that it wasn't his hour to do so in verse 5. But then he went ahead and did this, and it was a celebration after. So, yeah, that's the quick run through. Do you guys have any thoughts about this miracle?
I'll share one thought, just a question for you guys. I think both of you mentioned this is Jesus' first miracle. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Are we sure we're not forgetting one?
No.
You're not forgetting one?
Are you?
Oh, am I sure? No, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm not sure.
Well, if we're talking about the first miracle of the adult Jesus ministry, then yes, I'm sure. But if we're talking about in general, then we could also look at the virgin birth, or we could go all the way back to creation because Jesus was there.
That's
So
what I was thinking. Colossians 1:16 says, "For by him, by Jesus, all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible." And I think if there's anything that's a miracle, the creation of the heavens and the earth out of nothing certainly qualifies.
yeah, and your point is valid. I was more referencing the first miracle of his adult 3 year ministry.
Yeah, his move from going of just a carpenter to going to be a man that can change water to wine. But yeah, that's a good point, Jacob. That
I'm just giving y'all a hard time.
But that plays into what John's focus is throughout this book is the divinity of Jesus, and you bring that up in an excellent way using that Colossians passage, in that he's been divine from the beginning, from the time he was born, from before the time he was born, all the way back to in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So that's a good point.
I think one thing to think about with this is sometimes we read this and we go, why is this here? Like why is this specifically Jesus's first miracle on earth? On earth, why would Jesus choose to turn water to wine? And I think the answer here is found in verse 11. And so I'm going to read that for us, where it says, "This was beginning of his signs, and Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him." Well, that's the answer. Why would he do this? Well, to manifest his glory, and for the disciples to believe in him, who is Jesus, who could do miracles, who was the Son of God. This wasn't just a miracle to help out the family or to make this party a fun party. That's not what it was about. It was about to show who he was, and what he could do because he was the Son of God. And so I love the term here. It manifested his glory, that he was the Son of God, to be able to do this beautiful miracle, to turn dirty, gross water into something that is drinkable and usable for a party.
And just to piggyback off that, I love the way that the verse says there that it's a sign. The
Yeah.
miracle is a sign. Peter talks about that in his sermon on Acts chapter 2. And I just want to quickly read a verse and make a point about it. Acts 2:22, this is in Peter's sermon on the day of Pentecost. He says, "Men of Israel, listen to these words. Jesus the Nazarene, a man attested to you by God with miracles and wonders and signs, which God performed through him in your midst, just as you yourselves know. This man, delivered over by the predetermined plan and foreknowledge of God, you nailed him to a cross." And then he goes on to say, "But God raised him up again." And here's what I want to focus on. Peter says Jesus is attested to you by God with miracles, wonders, and signs. And so God is saying, I've proven that Jesus is my son through miracles, through wonders, and through signs. And those three words, miracles, wonders, and signs, when we're going through the New Testament, it's just something I like to do devotionally. I don't know if you guys have done this before or not, but when you read about a miracle Jesus has done, I always try to look, okay, what's the miracle? What's the wonder? And what's the sign? And as I look at this here in John 2, right, the miracle is what makes it miraculous is that dirty, nasty, hand washed water that Gabe you told us about was turned into good wine, to to good tasting wine. Right, that's the miracle. How did that happen? Well, only through the power of God. What about the wonder? I really think the wonder is the effect that it causes on people that sees it, kind of like the awe of it. So they see it and they drink it and they say, "You saved the best for last."
Mm.
It really showed that wine was good wine. And then the sign, I think that really relates to the purpose of the miracle. And remember, we said this is the first miracle that Jesus did in his adult ministry, at least. And so this would have been the first time, to my knowledge, that uh, people witnessed him do a miracle like that. And as far as the sign goes, what's the purpose? I think it's hard to miss the foreshadowing in it. If Jesus can take this dirty, nasty water and cleanse it and turn it into good wine, how much more will he be able to cleanse our filthy and dirty souls that have been contaminated with sin and make them pure and make them good again? And that's not something the disciples would understand till later on. But like I said, I think it's hard to miss the foreshadowing there of Jesus's cleansing power. He didn't just come to cleanse dirty water and purify it into good wine. He came to cleanse and purify the souls that have been stained by sin. And so that's just something I like to do devotionally, looking at different miracles throughout the life of Jesus. What's the miracle? What's the wonder? And what's the sign? And
Yeah, because if you just look at one of them, Jacob, this is a great point. If you just look at what the miracle is, you miss out on why Jesus actually did it. Jesus didn't do it just so people could drink wine. That's not what it was about. It was about to show that that he was the Son of God. So that's a really good point, Jacob. Thank
is
you
to
for
manifest His glory, right? That's what the I can't remember what verse you said you read from chapter 2.
12, verse 12.
12. Let's see. Yeah, he and his mother and his brothers and wait, no, that's not it.
11, sorry.
11. This is the beginning of his signs Jesus did in Cana and Galilee, and he manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So it showed the power that Jesus had, that he wasn't just some regular man. And because of that evidence, the disciples, then it says, believed in him. So that was the purpose, to show who he was. All of his miracles were to prove that he's God.
Yeah, all of that was well said. Another point that I think is important for us to see from this from this whole context of the wedding is Jesus and Mary's conversation. Um, she comes to him and says they have no wine, and Jesus said to her, uh, one of you read. I don't love how my translation translates this verse. One of you read verse 4 for me.
Yeah, I'll read it. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what do I have to do with you? My hour has not yet come."
And so then then the next thing that happens is Mary goes to the servants and says, "Whatever he tells you, do it." And that phrase from Mary is an extremely important thing for us to consider. She we we like to make excuses for sin. We like to say that Jesus is the Lord of our lives, but then we question what the Bible says or what Jesus has said. We we hear people preach the word and then say, I don't think that that's what that actually says, or I don't believe that that's what Jesus actually meant. And we've got to understand, we have to do what Mary said here. We have to we it's not about trusting Mary's word. That's not my point. But she says, whatever he tells you, do it. That's the heart that we should have. My grandpa said that faith is to say yes, Lord. Our response to Jesus should always be, without questions asked, yes, Lord.
Mm.
And that's what faith is, and we see here that Mary already had that kind of understanding about Jesus pretty early on, and there's possibly a lot of reasons for that, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from it. Faith is to say yes, Lord.
I love that, Tanner, and it's to say yes, Lord, even when it doesn't make sense in our
Yeah.
mind, because He is Jesus. Doesn't make sense to take dirty water pots to fill it with water. No, why would you put more water in water that's already dirty? It doesn't make sense. But He says, do whatever He say yes, Lord, because this is Jesus. And I love the thought that they normally wouldn't do this, that it doesn't make sense, but because He's Jesus, you do it because we have to put our complete trust and faith in Him. I really like that, Tanner. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Another Terry Peer gem.
Yeah, he preached that several months ago, and it hasn't left my mind since. So,
Yes, Lord, that's good. That's good stuff.
um, do you all have anything else on this wedding at Cana section?
Um, I do not. I think we covered this pretty well. I really love this section of scriptures. Was it Dick Chambers? Was that at Southern Indiana that he preached a sermon on this account?
I've
Uh,
heard it. I've heard it twice. Once was at the Southern Indiana Family Rally, and then he also preached it at oh man, where's Jason at?
Lake Mount.
Lake Mount. He preached it at Lake Mount too.
He has one of my favorite sermons that I've heard, and he's the one that really talked about the idea of the dirty water and why this is important. And but yeah, Dick really does a great job with this text. But that's what I think about when I read it was his sermon. But yeah, I think we cover it pretty well.
Well, the next section is also a really important section that we can learn a lot from. But I want to start with just by reading verse 13. It says, "The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem." And it, I want to make an important note for all of us. I think as Christian people, sometimes sometimes we forget that Jesus, while he was here on earth, was a faithful Jewish man. Christ, Christianity was not, the church wasn't a thing yet. And he he had to be a faithful Jewish man. He had to have perfect faithfulness to the law of Moses. Um, and that's why he was that was what he had to do to be the pure and unblemished Lamb of God and lay down his life for us. That was what faithfulness to God was, and he did it. He did it perfectly. So, he was there in Jerusalem for the Passover. He was dedicated to perfectly obeying the law of Moses, and I think it's important that we not forget that. Because if we try to view Jesus as if he was, if we try to view Jesus as if he wasn't a a Jewish man, then we lose a lot of the importance of why he did what he did.
I think that's really good, Tanner. And this is such a cool account. And this is, I believe, when we think of what's about to happen, I'm going to read verses 14 um, through 15 in a second. But when we think of this account and what's about to happen, I think there's some misunderstandings here and some misapplications. So I do want to spend a second in this section. But it says in verse 14, and he, Jesus, found in the temple those who were selling oxen, sheep, and doves, and the money changers sitting in their tables. Sees these people making money in the place that you would worship. And he says, and he made a scourge of cords, drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen. He poured out their coins, money changers, and then he overturned their tables. This is where Jesus flipped the tables of those who were selling things in the temple. And so I want to ask the question, what does this mean for us? You might have heard, well, Jesus got angry. That means that we can too. And so, what does this look like today as Christians for us if Jesus flipped tables in the temple?
Yeah, I think that it's really important that we understand that there's a difference between righteous anger and unrighteous anger. Um, the only thing that I can think of right off the top of my head to compare it to is like the heart of repentance, godly sorrow versus just feeling sorry. Godly sorrow is deep conviction and sorrow for doing wrong against God, whereas just feeling sorry is like, um, you know, I'll apologize, but I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing kind of thing. This is kind of similar relationship where righteous anger is getting being angry about the dishonor of God, whereas unrighteous anger and righteous anger can actually turn into unrighteous anger very quickly too. We have to keep that in mind because when anger turns into dishonoring God or dishonoring or harming or disrespecting other people, when it turns into sin, then it becomes unrighteous anger. So we have to be very aware that what Jesus did was righteous because he was angry about the dishonor of God, and it was righteous because in his anger he didn't sin. He didn't hurt people. He was
It was to make
focused.
a point. Yeah, to make a point.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so that would be my first response to what you're asking. Yeah.
Jacob, you got some thoughts on this?
I
For
I agree with what Tanner said. I don't necessarily have anything else other than what he said. Do you have any other thoughts, Gabe?
I just love this thought because I hear it all the time. We're told, sometimes we just need to go flip those tables. And my first thought is, well, I don't know if I can do that without sinning. I'm not Jesus. You know what I mean? And so we got to be careful. I love the thought you made, Tanner, that Jesus did this without sinning. We got to be careful. I don't think this should be our first reaction. Like I don't think righteous anger. We got to be really careful when we use this type of a reaction to things because we are human and it turns to anger really quickly. But the only time that Jesus did this was about the things of God and people disrespecting God. And so we got to be careful. If we are going to have this righteous anger, it's going to be about people misusing or approaching the goodness or the righteousness of God. Like it's okay to be angry when others do things that are not right, but we can't be sinning in our anger, for sure.
I think the other side of this is, while some people are saying, sometimes you got to flip the tables, the other side of this is people viewing Jesus as just this soft, loving teddy bear that that never that never got upset, never rebuked people. Um, and and I think it's important for us to realize that Jesus wasn't spineless.
No.
When it came to honoring God, when it came to the truth of God's word, he did not shy away from putting people in their place. Um, and there's a lot of people that would read this account would read this account of Jesus doing this, and because they have been so indoctrinated with this idea that Jesus would never do something like this, they just write it off as untrue almost, or they don't take the text to and learn anything from it because they think, oh well, Jesus wouldn't actually do that. No, he did. He was not spineless. He stood up for what was right. He honored God. And that's extremely important here as well.
Well, when we interact with people about God and about Christ, we talk about this a lot. We have to think about our approach. And Jesus, when he approached the sinners, those in pain, he did it with kindness. He healed the sick. He told them to drop the stones. He didn't throw the first stone with the lady caught in adultery. But when it comes to those that their heart, they knew what was right, which was they were there in the temple. They knew that this was the place that people would be to worship God, but they were taking advantage of it. That's when he flipped tables. That's when he used the not spot, like the hard fist approach, the rod of correction, is how Paul describes it. And I think it's all about approach. Sometimes we have to be gentle and kind and loving, but then sometimes when people know what's right but choose not to do what's right, that's when the hard approach might need to be used. And so I think that's a really cool thing to see here. And I think every person leads one way or the other. Like some people, as some Christians might lean closer to the rod, they might be quicker to have this anger, or they might lean the other way and they're maybe a little softer. And I think you have to know who you are and know where you lean, and be careful not to react quickly, and really use wisdom when it comes to react or to interacting with those that are outside of Christ, because we need both approaches, both of them.
Yeah, and the thing of people that know better and people that don't is a big deal here. I mean, we see throughout the Gospels how Jesus responds to the Pharisees,
Yeah.
because they should know better. They are
Wow.
they are highly educated in the law of Moses, but they've turned it into more of a um, they've taken the heart out of it. Is what Jesus tells them again and again throughout the Gospels. Another thing here is this thing that I think we see in churches today, where there's a priority of money over honoring God. And we can look at this in a personal way too, but I want to focus for a minute on the fact that bearing fruit uh, must be looked at from a church wide view as well as an individual view. And I think this has an impact from a church wide view more than anything. Congregations today, there is an element of business that has to be done because of the government and things like that, but we must not treat it like a business. It is not a business, it is the church of Jesus Christ. And I know churches, I've heard of churches, I don't know personally, but I've heard of churches um, that they take advantage of the the setting to make money, and that's their priority. They treat it like a business instead of taking advantage of the setting to bear fruit for Christ. And that's a big deal.
Well, it's also the idea of success, Tanner. Like, what is success in the church? Is it, do we have, enough money in the bank? Do we have a good enough facilities? Do we have enough people? Is that success, or success bearing fruit, growing, being more like Jesus, people coming to Christ and being immersed into him? That we got to look at, success in the church is not success in the world. Those things don't always line up, and so we got to be careful if we think of ourselves, what are we looking towards? Like, if what is success in this place? We got to make sure we have a biblical perspective and not one that is worldly, because it's easy to cross those lines when we have to do some sort of business when it comes to living in society today. But we have to make sure we realize that success according to Christ is different than success according to the world, or a business perspective.
Yeah, and people look at the parable of talents a lot. And I mean, I've heard sermons preached on the parable of talents to preach on money, but really the parable of talents, Jesus is talking about how he has given us the gospel, he's given us the truth, and he's talking about what we should do with it. Are we just going to hold on to it and be selfish and hide it away, or are we going to share it with other people and bear fruit through that? And it really hurts me when I see that text abused, uh, because I've heard it said, um, with the last guy, the guy that got the one talent and then hid it away, and then the guy comes back and says, "Well, you should have at least put it in the bank to earn interest." And people use that, they misapply it and say, well, we have to be good stewards with our money. We need to make sure that our money is in the right place so that we earn interest. That's not the point. That is a misuse of a biblical text. Um, so I, I think this is really important. What are we prioritizing in the church? Are we honoring God? Are we striving to bear fruit? Or are we just trying to protect our money? The money is to be used. The money in the church is to be used for kingdom purposes, not to gain as much as we need, or want, or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tanner. I think it's important to look at the reaction to what Jesus did. After Jesus flipped the tables, the Jews said to him, "What sign do you show us as your authority to do these things?" Basically, they're saying, "Who are you to flip a table?" And then I know you wanted to talk about this, Tanner. Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." What is Jesus saying here, Tan?
If I can, I have one more thing to say about the money thing, and then I'll answer your question. But I think we misunderstand what a blessing from God is. Because a lot of times when people are talking about being blessed, it's, I have a nice home, I have a bunch of money in the bank, all of these worldly things. But I think when we're talking about God is the one that gives us blessing. And when we view the how much income we have as the blessing, I'm not saying that that's not a blessing, but I think we're, especially in the church, we're misviewing what a blessing is. Because say we view this building as a nice blessing, sure. But if all of our focus is on buildings and money and having more money, that is not what God's purpose for the kingdom is. But if we're using our money for kingdom purposes, and then God is continuing to bless us with more money to do more kingdom purposes, that is really a blessing from God, because God blesses the faithful. And so we have to understand better what a blessing is and what it means to be faithful. Yes, we're supposed to be good stewards, but what does it mean to be a good steward? To save it and hold on to it, or to use it for his purposes? So that's the last thing on that. Yes, the Jesus talks about destroy. He says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Um, this is Jesus prophesying his resurrection. And this is one of the first, if not the first times we see this from Jesus. Before Jacob corrects me and says, "Well, there's prophecies in the Old Testament." I'm talking about Jesus in his adult ministry,
Yeah.
prophesying about his resurrection. Um, but I think this is important. This is another example of John exposing the fact that Jesus is the divine Son of God, and I find it really interesting here that John, he does this thing a couple times through the gospel where he talks about a past fact and then he kind of jumps to the future a little bit, maybe not present, but he jumps forward and he talks about how after the resurrection the disciples looked back and thought about this statement, this time, this moment, and realized Jesus was talking about this. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is another instance where we see foreshadowing, right, with the sign of a miracle. So the first one from the wedding at Cana, the foreshadowing was, or if you remember, if Jesus can cleanse this nasty water and turn it into pure wine, how much more can he purify our nasty souls that have been staying with sin? And then Jesus answers here and says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up." And John tells us the Jews' response. They said, "It took 46 years to build this thing. And you think you're going to do it on your own in 3 days?" I mean, they don't get it at first. But John tells us Jesus was speaking of the temple of his body. That was the sign. Um, and I think it's just foreshadowing again the resurrection of Jesus, and John again tells us later on, like you said, Tanner, looking into the future in verse 22, when he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered this event, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus was spoken. So I just think it's cool that a couple of times here in chapter 2 we see a sign that leads to some foreshadowing about what Jesus is going to accomplish later in his ministry.
Yeah, I love that they had an aha moment. They're like, they're after Jesus is raised from the dead, and they went, "Oh man, that's what he was saying."
I remember when he said he was going to build that temple in 3 days, and they were all saying it took 46 years. What do you mean 3 days? Now I get it.
Yeah, yeah. That's super cool. And the fact that we can hold this now and read this and be like, man, like this is awesome. What Jesus was saying at the beginning of his ministry was fulfilled at the end of ministry. We got a blessing to be able to have the entirety of God's word. And that, it's awesome. Something I think we take for granted sometimes, that we have the picture here, that we can actually see, not just fragments.
Yeah. Well, I think that's everything I have from this chapter. What else we got? You got anything else?
No, I think those are the main high points. I really love the idea we kept coming back to, like, what Jesus is doing is pointing to who he is and what he's going to do, which is to he's going to raise from the dead and prove to have power, and be the Son of God. And so I love the foreshadowing is what you said, Jacob, we see here. And we'll continue into that in the next couple of chapters when we're looking at more miracles, what Jesus does, and when Jesus talks about who he is, we're going to really talk about who Jesus says he is, and what that means for us today, which I think is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and again, this is all important to bearing fruit because we bear fruit because of him and in him
Yeah.
and through him. And so recognizing who he is and who he said he is extremely important for that. So
And as we're getting ready to close out, Cabe, do you want to give us another reminder of your revival coming up next week for,
Yeah.
for all of our Irvin area listeners?
Yeah. So, at Mount Carmel Christian Church in Ravenna, Kentucky, where I'm the evangelist there, we're having a revival. Let me get the exact dates. It's not this week, but next week, and that is May um, 4th through 7th. It's Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night at 6:30. And so if you're in the area and want to travel out, CJ Epperson is preaching each night for us, all about how to share Jesus with others. And so if you want to come out and fellowship with us, we would love to have you. So And that's May 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and if you're in the area, I'll just add to that. There's 2 more nights of the revival at Central Christian Church in Cynthiana, Kentucky. And I think all 3 of us are going to try and be there this evening. And then the last night's tomorrow, so I'd encourage you to go to that as well. Aaron Davis is preaching, and he's a great preacher, and it would be worth the trip to go and see that as well.
Some Bible teaching, some boot stomping. You'll probably see some of
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. Do you head like this?
Yeah.
All right. Jacob Simpson, I didn't remind you, but I think you have Song of the Week this week.
Yeah, you love to do this.
Is it right? Do I need to like be responsible for this, or should we just remember?
The organizer here. I also think there was a while we didn't do Song of the Week every week. It was like every other week or maybe a couple times a month. We have
No.
not every week since it came out.
Since we started, we've done it every week.
I'm gonna go back and double check you on this. Well, I had
You
a
can.
couple of them I just don't want to use or redo. What Need to Breathe songs do we have on here? Multiplied,
West
West
Texas.
This Wind. All right. My song of the week this week is another Need to Breathe song. I believe the title of it's called Washed by the Water. Let me look it up here so I can get the lyric for you.
By the water.
Correct.
Yeah, Washed by the Water. Let's see here. Even when the rain falls, even when the flood starts rising, even when the storm comes, I am washed by the water.
That's
And
good.
so of course, the idea is when life gets tough, it seems like everything's going bad. We can remember that we were washed clean, not because of the power of the water, but in the water of baptism, because of the power of Jesus' blood that cleanses us. And so, a great gospel song there from a band that I really love, Need to Breathe, Washed by the Water. We'll have that one on there for you guys.
You want the acoustic live version or just the normal version?
I like the version.
You know, let me listen to both of them after this is over, and I'll add whichever one's better on there because I can't remember which one I like better. I really like both so I have both on my personal playlist. So I'll have to figure out which one I want on there.
Okay, sounds good.
That's a good one.
All right, guys. We again thank you guys for listening. Be sure to think about coming to the revivals. Mark your calendar for November 14th and 15th, where we will one of those 2 days be having a competition with Theology Nerds podcast, and go check them out. Their podcast is good, and I always learn a lot from listening to those guys. And so, check that out. Mark your calendar. We thank you guys for listening, and as always, go bear fruit, and so prove to be one of Jesus's disciples.